What's up, Wolfpack Nation? Today is Thursday, and we have a special Locked On crossover episode for you. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com in order to get started. Locked On Wolfpack and Locked On Vols. Without further ado, here we go.
Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols and Locked On Wolfpack. It is a Locked On crossover edition. I'm Eric Cain with Locked On Wolfpack hosts Grayson Boone and Kenton Gibbs. We got a busy show coming up here today. Of course, the big-time showdown Saturday night, Charlotte for the Duke's Mayo Classic. It is Tennessee and NC State. Guys, Grayson, you and I were talking, off air, but we're tired of talking about this game. Ready to see it, take place out there on the field.
It always takes forever to get through a game week, but with as much anticipation as there is surrounding this one, this week has felt like 4 weeks. I'm ready to kick this thing off, see how we actually look on the grass. Certainly a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to go through, check on those pregame vibes a little bit, some storylines entering this matchup, key matchups, injury reports, and plus we'll get into our predictions later on in the show. Tennessee's a 7.5-point favorite, totals at 60.5. Who covers, who wins this football game, all that and more coming up here in the next 30 minutes here on Locked On Vols and Locked On Wolfpack. Appreciate you guys making this show your first listen. Make your second listen Locked On ACC or Locked On SEC, Locked On College Football. Get you set for the football weekend. All right, guys, I want to start it off this way. I feel like Tennessee's fan base is confident. I feel like Tennessee's fan base is ready to roll. I'm not saying that it's going to be a multiple score game or anything, but I think that there's a lot of good feelings, especially coming off the game where Tennessee just had against UT Chattanooga. I know it was UT Chat, but Tennessee's offense looks so explosive, and of course, Nico Ansah. But what's the vibes heading into this game from the Wolfpack fan base?
I tell you what, it's a little bit weird because the week 1 game against Western Carolina didn't exactly go the way we had all anticipated. Kind of Western hung around for 3/4 of that game before we finally took it over in the fourth. And despite the offensive numbers we put up, none of us really felt that great the morning after and the following weekend. But I guess the benefit to our state of mind was watching the rest of college football that weekend because we began on a Thursday. Sometimes teams will come a little slow out the gate. They'll struggle out of the box. And we've kind of cornered our optimism that direction, hoping that maybe the fourth quarter of that game was more of the team that we will see moving forward. So a little bit uneasy out of the gates. We got the win, and that's always great, but we needed to see a little bit more to feel some more confidence before we run into Tennessee.
Yeah, Kenton, we'll get into more of the offense for NC State, but a lot of new pieces there. Do you feel like just week 1, it'll take a little while to come together and gel together a little bit? I mean, it doesn't always, when you play an FCS opponent, it doesn't always go as according to plan. Tennessee played AP, Austin Peay last year, and I mean, they won the game, but it was just kind of a snoozer, right? It doesn't always go like Tennessee UTC. Do you think it just takes a little while for this offense to kind of come together?
Anytime you see a win against an FCS opponent that's under 21 points, it's like having a one-night stand, but you wake up next to them too. Like, you got the desired outcome, but you're regretting some things that happened at the same time. And that's kind of where this team is right now. But in all seriousness, you're absolutely right in terms of this is week 1 with so many new pieces. Not only week 1, when's the last time that Grayson McCall played football against guys that were able to tear his head off again? Because in practice, it's different. Things are very different. It's a different level of pressure when you know this guy coming off the edge can hit me in ways that my starting defensive end, even if he's a first-round draft pick, might get tossed off the team for. So things get a little different there. But it was very much so week 1. And I'm not big into week 1 overreactions because there are plenty of teams, if you look through the history of not just college football, but virtually all levels of football, where week 1, wonky things happen. Again, you got the desired outcome. You got the win. You don't feel good about it. You don't feel great about it. You don't walk away saying, I'm super confident going up against Tennessee now. I feel much better going out of this game than I do coming into it. But the reality is 1 week a team does not make. Right? Like, that's just, it's things didn't go the way you wanted to on offense. Things didn't go the way you wanted to on defense. You live with that. You learn from that. Always better to learn a lesson in a win than a loss.
I think looking at it from a Tennessee perspective, one of the main storylines of this game is obviously quarterback Nico Imaliava. He's been a heralded prospect and was number one overall player according to the On3 rankings back in 2023, I guess. And came in, backed up last year for Joe Milton, got the start in the bowl game, 4 total touchdowns. Iowa's defense allowed 4 rushing touchdowns all year long, and he rushed for 3 in that game alone. And then his second start was last weekend, and of course he tore it up. Obviously, the competition is going to get steeper, with NC State this weekend. Of course, you get into SEC play. So I'm intrigued to see what he looks like over the course of the season. But, it's hard not to slow that hype train from what you saw last week from Nico. Some of the throws, the windows he was fitting that ball into, hitting receivers in stride, up the seam in front of a safety over the linebacker. It was really, really cool to see. Grayson, does it feel like, obviously, from an NC State perspective, that Nico is the guy that you got to try to slip up, going to try to confuse and maybe pressure and force into bad decisions for that defense to have some success?
He absolutely is. On paper and even on tape, the guy's terrifying. I'll just be quite honest about that. He looks exactly like the number one quarterback in that year would. He has all the tools. He has all the skills. He has now the team behind him because he is the guy. And NC State, if they want a realistic shot at beating Tennessee, you have to make Nico's life a living hell back there in the backfield. Because if you don't, he will pick you apart much like a surgeon will on Saturday night. So, it's very clear what NC State has to do. If they don't drive Nico into making any big mistakes in this game, it might be some uphill battling for that NC State defense.
For NC State's offense, we mentioned all the newcomers. Last year it was a really bad offense. One great player, and he's a great player again this year. We'll get to him in a moment. But these newcomers, right? Grace McCall, who we've mentioned, and Noah Rogers, who can stretch the field vertically. Justin Jolie, the tight end coming over from UConn. You got a new center from Notre Dame. I got a couple new running backs as well. Kenton, it feels like it's a whole new cast of characters. And again, as the season goes along, I think that unit can be really good if they stay healthy. I think they'll be better than what they were in week 1. But I feel like it's that unit trying to find its identity. And, Tennessee's got a brand new secondary as well. So maybe there's some opportunity there.
I disagree. I think that offense has their identity. I think that it's the executing of the identity, right? It's that moment of what you want to do. It's simple, but it's not easy. Very similar to the defensive game plan of keep everything in front of you and pressure Nico. It's simple. That is quite literally the strategy to beat Tennessee. When Joe Milton was there, when Hendon Hooker was there, it's simple. It is not easy. Same thing for this offense. Your goal is to be who you are supposed to be. Our wide receivers, after seeing what I saw against Western Carolina, I knew that they were going to be better than them. The problem is I didn't see a single guy on NC State's team be covered. There was never a time where I could tell this guy's running that route with intentionality, and there was a defender within 2 to 3 yards of him. So I get it. This ain't Western Carolina. You're not, a different level of athlete. However, Tennessee's defense has been much maligned for a reason. And then you talk about breaking in a new secondary. This game will come down to one very simple thing that many people try to say, you can paint it and twist it however you want. It's going to come down to this. Whoever protects their quarterback better will win the game, period. Whoever gives their QB more time will win this ballgame. Now, I know that Tennessee has a vaunted defensive line. I'm aware of that. However, NC State has 2 tackles, one of which has the potential to be a first-round draft pick next year. Another of which, in Ja'Carrius Peak, if he were to decide to come out this year, I'm not sure what his draft prospect will look like, but another year or 2 of refining, I'm sure he'll be playing on Sunday. So it's very simply who can protect their quarterback the best, because when I look at Tennessee's defense, I say to myself, those DBs, they look like some lamb chops. Those DBs look like some braised oxtails. They look like some mac and cheese. They look like a little bit of collard greens on the side. You got to clean your greens first. Don't give me that canned stuff. I mean that homemade Big Mama with the arm. We're not going to go there. But long story short, the defensive backfield looks very pliable. It is about, can you protect your quarterback enough for him to get it there? And can Grayson McCall be who Grayson McCall is supposed to be? He's supposed to be a guy that makes good decisions. He's on time. He's on target. If he does those things, if he has the time to be those things, It could be a track meet on grass. It could be a positive outcome for the Wolfpack. All that is still to be seen.
Key matchups, injury reports, and so much more. Locked On Crossover Edition, Locked On Vols, and Locked On Wolfpack. Back in a moment.
Our first sponsor of the day is FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, but that's because it's America's #1 sportsbook. We have something a little different for you right now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and if you choose, you can cancel at any time. Just head on over to FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. You already know. That's FanDuel.
Hey, welcome back into a Locked On Vols and Wolfpack crossover show. Appreciate you guys making this your first listen, your first watch here on a Thursday morning. I'm Eric Cain alongside Grayson Boone and Kenton Gibbs. Guys, injury report. Let's get that out of the way real quick. Obviously, I know there's some guys in the secondary for North Carolina State that I think you're getting one back. I think, obviously, your safety's not going to be there this weekend. What's the injury situation for the Wolfpack heading into the weekend?
So Devin Boykin, we all saw the news kind of hit the internet a couple days ago. That's not new news. He was injured way back before we played our bowl game in December. He tore his ACL. We always kind of thought it was a little too ambitious to expect him back so early in September. And then the team announced that he's likely not to be back until October. So that's not exactly news there. However, what is news, our safety Jahad Carter, who did not play in week 1, will be in the lineup for week 2. He could have played, according to Coach Doran, but held him out for precautionary reasons. And then we also get our starting Mike linebacker, Caden Fordham, back, not injured, but he was ejected on the first defensive series of last week's game. Crazy way to start your year, but he will be back in the lineup as well. So certainly looking for a more cohesive defensive unit here in week 2, but against Tennessee, you're going to have to bring it.
Tennessee starting cornerback Ricky Gibson was held out week 1, kind of much like Carter there for NC State. More of a precaution. He had some nagging injuries during camp, and Josh Heupel said Monday that he's going to go. He'll be ready to roll. So it'll be Ricky Gibson at one corner, Jamal McCoy at the other corner. So that's good news for Tennessee. Mike Matthews, 5-star freshman wide receiver, was held out week 1. We'll see if he's available in week 2. I think Braylon Staley will be available at wide receiver, but both of those guys kind of the outside looking in to this deep wide receiver rotation for Tennessee here at the beginning of the year. Yeah, Tennessee overall, I mean, Jordan Thomas got hurt in fall camp. He's out for the year, and that's kind of old news as well. It's another one of those starters in the secondary that's gone. But overall, this is a pretty healthy Tennessee team entering the week, so that's pretty good. Key matchups. I want to start back on the line of scrimmage because you guys were talking about it in segment number 1. You know, the offensive line for NC State, Tennessee's defensive line. Tennessee's defensive line, they will play, Rodney Garner will literally play 14 guys. He will do line changes, and that's how it'll be the entire football game. James Pierce will get more snaps. He played like 10 snaps against UTC because there was no point in risking it. But Tennessee's deep. Tennessee's pretty good, and there's a lot of veterans up front on that defensive line that have played for 3-4 years. The offensive line for NC State, I mean, again, I don't watch the game. I didn't watch every snap against Western Carolina. Returning 4 guys with starting experience, adding a center. The left tackle that you guys mentioned, NFL prospect, first-round type guy. Feels like it's going to be a pretty good offensive line. I look at the box score, I see 9 TFLs. What happened in week 1 against Western Carolina?
Yeah, so what happened in week 1 against Western Carolina is a problem that has been plaguing NC State for quite some time. The inability to create knockback. Even when NC State has had really good offensive lines, it's been really good in terms of pass blocking. We have not seen the ability to reestablish a line of scrimmage consistently against pretty much anybody by this NC State team, early in seasons at least. We have not seen that in quite some time. Now, last year, yes, that team absolutely ended the season mauling people. There's a play against the Dirty Foot Club, or UNC as the rest of the country knows them, that it showed like the offensive line looked like a waning gibbous moon, because it was just like everybody's curving and moving in the right direction. And this side is cutting people off on the backside. Front side is kind of folding guys up. We saw plays like that from them down the stretch last year. We saw plays like that from them against Virginia Tech last year, another defense that struggled with the run, and they showed why in that game. But all in all, it continues to be a problem early in the season for NC State teams, the inability to, again, reestablish the line of scrimmage, because we all know stalemating, it works in the offense's favor depending on the type of back you have. Losing at the line of scrimmage is obviously never what you want to do. And there were too many plays where it wasn't like guys were getting clean hands on people and just being blown back. There was either a missed assignment, everybody blocks right except one guy, or there were moments where it was a stalemate and our backs didn't do much with it. So all in all, I look at this situation and I say to myself, I don't look at Tennessee's defensive line and say, things are going to get easier, guys. Congratulations. You beat the mighty Western Carolina Catamounts, and now you've got the lowly old bums they call the Tennessee Volunteers coming through. I don't look at the defensive line and say that. In fact, I say the exact opposite. It is a lot like Alice in Wonderland, how it ends with beware the Jabberwocky, the Bandersnatch, and all that, because week after week, you're going to see good defensive lines. Week after week, you're going to see ball players that are going to be playing on Sundays, and this is one of their biggest tests yet in terms of, in this game, I'm not even expecting winning at the line of scrimmage. If they win at the line of scrimmage in the run game, I'm surprised. I'm amazed. I love it. But to me, if you can stalemate and we can get more explosive touches out of our backs in terms of making guys miss and making your offensive line right, even if they aren't perfect, that to me is an ideal situation for NC State's run game in this one.
Be watching a lot of scrimmage, no doubt. Again, on paper, it should be a really, really good battle. For Tennessee, I think, you got to defend number 10, right? I mean, that guy lines up everywhere, inside, outside. I was told earlier this week that he was the second leading rusher for the Wolfpack a season ago. He threw a touchdown pass. Dude seems to be doing everything. In an offense that was not very good last year, he had 10 touchdowns. That's solid. And of course, he caught all 3 from Grayson McCall there in week 1. Grayson, if you're Tennessee's defensive coordinator, Tim Banks, how do you slow? I mean, because he's going to get some yards. He'll make some plays. How do you slow down KC Concepion?
You got to find an effective way to bracket that guy, because if not, he will break loose. He is so uncoverable as just a true sophomore. It's kind of unbelievable to even think about. But Tennessee, make no mistake about it, you have to find a way to take number 10 out of the game. You can let anyone else, you can challenge them to beat you, but you have to say, I will not let KC Concepion beat us in this game. That's really your biggest task on defense, in addition to getting to McCall. But very shifty, very smart, very, very elite route runner. So he's a tough task. There's certainly not an easy way to double a guy like him. But if you're Tennessee's defensive coordinator, you have to take KC out of the game.
Kenton, what's one of those key matchups that would favor that if NC State wins, it put them on the right path to win the football game?
Belton v. Pierce. Belton v. Pierce, that is the one that you need to see and say, if NC State wins that matchup, oh boy, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day for that defense, because Pierce, the thing that is so interesting to me is when I watch him play, normally I say the more I watch a defensive lineman play, the more I enjoy it. Pierce does not give me that same effect, and I know that Tennessee fans are going to be all over me because of that, but here's the reason why. I enjoy guys that are multifaceted, and by multifaceted, I don't mean has a deep array of pass rush moves. I mean a guy that can also hanker down against the run. Now, with all due respect to this young man, he's listed at 243. When I look at him, when I look at Pierce, I see 230 soaking wet.
And he's much bigger than what he's been.
And that's the thing. Like I look at him and I say to myself, okay, if he can find a way to get better against the run, that's the number 1 draft pick. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm sorry for the Shador and Travis Hunter fanboys out there. That's your number 1 pick, Pierce, if he can put on good weight and still be able to move the way he does. The problem is I have seen him too often not only be like washed down or kind of, struggle with certain runs coming directly at him. I have seen him be effectively neutralized by big tackles that are like, hey, that guy, he's not supposed to be that good. That's just an objective factor. I'm not talking about the guys from Bama that, of course, first rounders and all that. There have been other games where he's looked very pedestrian. And so I say the same thing for Belton, and that's my problem with this matchup determining the game, because there have been times where Belton has looked like an absolute road grader. He gets his hands on you, you're done. And he's had moments where in pass protection, if he keeps you in front of him, you cannot work an edge around him. He'll just wash your own by the quarterback. Congratulations, Grayson. You've got all the time you need to throw. With that in mind, he also has had moments where he had lapses in his technique. And then one bad play turned into two, and then two turned into three, and three turned into a series. A series turns into a bad game. So the question for this matchup is who is ready to go make themselves some money? Because both of these guys, this is a big money bag game. If you can dominate in this game, you show the scouts definitively, I'm not just good against elite talent. Put that on. Put that anytime you got questions about me, turn on that NC State Tennessee game, and I hope that tape answers it. And then on top of that, you talk about the way that Tennessee comes in, line changes and all that. And here's the thing: could I see a world where Tennessee's second and third lines are net positives that are having the ability to get home? Absolutely. But what type of statement does it send if you're saying, "Oh, this is your best player, I'm gonna put him in a box by myself. I'm going to put him in a coffin by myself"? What message does that send to the guys behind him? What message does that send to the defensive coordinator? What does that do to your psyche as a team when you're like, we're trying to get stops, but our ace in the hole ain't acing like it should ace?
Bowl predictions, score predictions, and so much more. We'll wrap up this Locked On crossover edition, Locked On Vols and Locked On Wolfpack here in a moment.
Our second sponsor of the day is LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are just right for that role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you hire professionals that you simply cannot find anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job, but may be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So quite frankly, if you're not on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, they simply might not have the time or resources to effectively hire. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make this process easier. They've even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, which streamlines this process. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, it's time to get into it. Let's make our predictions here. Tennessee comes in as I believe the line opened at 5.5 on Sunday. It's climbed to 7.5 according to FanDuel. That totals at 60.5. The Tennessee's a touchdown favorite and a little more. Grayson, do you think NC State covers? And then ultimately, do you think that the Wolfpack can pull off this upset at a neutral site?
My gut reaction tells me it's going to be a tough task for NC State to cover and or win this game. I think they have the capability to do so. However, they have to play nearly a perfect game in my mind. I think Tennessee's crazy athletic. They're crazy fast. They played a breakneck pace on offense, which got a little play on Twitter earlier this week.
Yeah, remind me. I want to ask you about that here in a moment. Yeah. Go ahead.
NC State's got their work cut out for them, to say the very least. But I also think that NC State's going to look entirely different than they did in week one. I think they will be more focused. To be quite honest with you, I think they got caught napping a little bit against Western Carolina until that fourth quarter. They kind of had that blank moment. We might actually lose this game. Then they turned it on. I think that fourth quarter is going to be more of the real NC State. Will the real NC State please stand up? I think that's what you're going to see. However, I just think Tennessee's a little bit too overwhelming in this game. Traditionally, and maybe I should say historically, NC State also struggles a little bit in these types of games, neutral site against an SEC opponent. I have Tennessee winning this game by a score of 41-27. So unfortunately, NC State does not cover. But like I said, I don't see a world where NC State can't win. I just think it will take a lot to do so.
We'll say you, Kenton.
Well, Dave Doran has struggled mightily going 0-3 against SEC teams, I believe, that are ranked in the top 13. It's interesting that that's the exact cutoff, because did you know that 14 and back, he's 2-2 against those teams?
I was going to say Tennessee's 14.
Interesting. Why is that important to this game? Everybody sees Dave Doran as a habitual big game choker. Everybody sees him as a guy he can never get it done when it matters most. Everybody sees him as a guy that, hey, you always going to be the bridesmaid, never the bride, even on your best day. Heupel, on the other hand, he's got all the love in the world. He's got everybody rocking with him, riding behind him. The only impediment to his ascension in the SEC ranks is that guy down there in Athens. Because let's just be honest, we saw Bama Willie at practice. That Nick Saban ain't walking through that door. Okay, that's just the reality. Texas can't handle people doing horns down. Brent Venables should have been the Bud Foster of our generation, but he decided to become a head coach for whatever reason. So I don't see too many impediments in Tennessee's way. They go at a breakneck speed offensively. They have breakneck speed offensively. Wide receivers that can absolutely get it done vertically. And so it really begs the question, why would you ever want to pick NC State in this game? They've got corners that may not be able to keep up. They've got a running game that seems inept at times. And can they keep up if it's a track meet on grass? I say yes. I say yes, they can keep up. I say yes, they can make it a very good game if it's a track meet. However, if this turns into a grinded out slugged game, that's a complete wild card because I'm not sure about our linebackers. I think the Wolfpack cover, but do not win. I've got 34-28 Tennessee in this one. I think that NC State comes very, very close here, but I struggle to pick against Nico because that young man, watching him, he's one of those quarterbacks that makes me happy to be retired. There are very few players. Lamar Jackson was the first one. I watched him the year after I was retired because of injury, play NC State, and I said, retirement ain't the worst thing in the world. I could be chasing that guy down. Nico is another one. He is absolute nightmare fuel for defensive coordinators and defensive linemen. But the reality is you stop him the same way you stop any other quarterback. It is simple, but not easy. Get pressure on him, make things happen. The only reason that I could see this game being close and NC State possibly taking it, that Tennessee secondary cannot cover grass. And if Robert and I realizes that early enough and realizes I don't need to run a ball against these guys, we can just use our quick passing game as our de facto run game, they'll be just fine, especially if Grayson McCall is hot and hitting his targets. So don't be surprised if NC State pulls one off in Bank of America, but I'm going to pick against them in this one.
Well, I would agree with you about that secondary comment, but they're brand new. It's all brand new. Now, in years past, I mean, the defense, the secondary's been the Achilles heel essentially. 2022, when Tennessee was really good, that secondary was trash. And last year they got much better, actually. Still not good, but they got much better. But I mean, this year it's everybody's new. Jamal McCoy coming in, I think he's a player. I like Rick Gibson a lot. Safety play. I mean, I'm intrigued to see if McCall goes, deep over the middle, tries it over the top. I'm intrigued to see what happens there, on a consistent basis. Tennessee's pretty good at star athletically, but just young, green, raw. They haven't played an awful lot. So, again, there are a lot of questions. Biggest question mark about Tennessee coming into the year was the secondary, and, you didn't get challenged at all in week 1 against Chattanooga. So I'm intrigued to see. We might not get them all answered, but we're going to find out a lot, about this game with the Tennessee secondary. I like the line of scrimmage play in this one. I think Tennessee's defensive line, I'll say this for a lot of games this year, I think Tennessee's defensive line will be certainly beneficial in the second half just because they play so many guys. I mean, Pierce should play, close to around 30 snaps, but even that's not a lot, right? 30 or 40 snaps. Yeah. I mean, they just keep all these guys so fresh. If Tennessee can, again, limit Concepion and not let him take over this game, again, he's going to make catches. He's going to make plays. He'll probably find the end zone. But he can't take over the football game.
Right.
If you can just slow him down some, I've got the confidence in Tennessee's offense right now to go, up and down the field and score. Not at will, but, have a pretty good offensive day. I like Tennessee at the line of scrimmage. I like the explosiveness out there with some new pieces for NC State defensively to the way I understand it. And I think Tennessee will run the football really well. Everybody talks about Josh Heupel, running or not running gun, but, air raid this and West Coast offense. I mean, they run the football. They do it really well. They've averaged 200 yards a game since Heupel's been at Tennessee. So I've picked Tennessee to win this game for weeks now, and I'm not going to come off that. I'm kind of where you are, Grayson, right now. I think I like Tennessee 42-28, somewhere around there. I could see it being like a one-score game, and then maybe Tennessee punches it in late to make that score look a little bit bigger. But I do like Tennessee in this one. And obviously, I think we all, if my math is mathing correct, I think we're all taking the over, right at 60. So
Smash that over. There's going to be some points.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Out the door, do want to ask Grayson, I saw you talking about on Twitter, and you mentioned a moment ago, obviously Tennessee's tempo, it's nasty. You can replicate it in practice and do everything and try to simulate and everything, and I mean, that's awesome. You just don't know till you get in that situation, and I'm intrigued to see how NC State responds. Because I'll say this, a lot of time back in 2021, like whenever Tennessee was going around the SEC with this tempo for the first time, it would smack teams, like even Georgia, it would smack teams in the face and then be like, oh, okay, we get it now, let's settle in. How long do you think that adjustment period will be there for the NC State defense?
It'll be really interesting right out of the gate because we know that Heupel offense, they like to score early and they like to score often. And so the pressure is going to be on the NC State defense immediately. And referring to those comments that poured out over Twitter, DK Kaufman was the player in the interview. And I
saw nothing wrong with what he said.
Okay, so we're in agreement there because what he didn't say is that he was mastering the Tennessee tempo and the Tennessee offense and that the scout team would be easier than playing Tennessee. That's what Tennessee fans ran with. That's not what he actually said. What he did say was that the coaching staff is creating an unrealistic situation in practice to make it harder than it actually will be in the game in terms of where the ball will be spotted on the hash. That's all he said. Now, Tennessee fans, I love you. You're delusional. I love you for it. That's what makes college sports so great. But let's not put words in his mouth to try and generate some bulletin board material there. But yeah, I say all that to say NC State's defense, we're going to need to know if they have it or not from quarter one. They will need to bring the intensity right from go because if not, Heupel's going to turn up the heat. Nico's going to turn up the heat. You know, the wide receiving core, Sampson in the backfield. We're going to know right away if NC State has brought it or not in this game Saturday night.
Saturday night, 7:30 ABC, Bank of America Stadium, and the Duke's Mayo Classic. I'm Eric Cain, Locked On Vols host, with Grayson Boone and Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see what happens, all right?
Kainer, we appreciate you. Go Pack.
Go Pack.